Behind schedule, so I'm going to start us up. My name is Scott. I'm from Los Angeles, and in LA we do love the LA Lakers.
Very nice.
They're 8-0. Who's the woman from Cleveland? So maybe we can become friends now, and together we conspire against LeBron James.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Or maybe not.
Pray about it.
I don't need to say a lot about LA. It gets talked about probably more than it should. Some of the intense facts about it. It's the gang capital of America, 88,000 estimated gang members. It's the homeless capital of America. On a given night, it's estimated that there are about 50,000 homeless people on the streets in Los Angeles. It's a center of wealth and influence and vanity. It's true. And it's simultaneously the home of, it's debatable where the term Skid Row comes from, but certainly one of the original places where just the intensive poverty and homelessness down in Skid Row in Los Angeles, that's where a lot of those homeless folks are. And it's thriving to this day, and yet at the same time, in that literal location, I don't know if any of you guys know about the Azusa Street Revival, but it was basically the explosion of influence of Pentecostalism. It was this intense racial reconciliation happening back in 1906, right in the center of that. So you've got good things, major problems, and then, but definite potential for God to do massive, huge things in the city, and even a history of God doing that. In Laup, we just finished our 30th year. There's been some pretty amazing directors of Laup, so I'm a little intimidated as I step into this role. There's a guy named Paul Gibson that started in 1981. It was back in Pasadena. Todd Minturn was like a Laup veteran for 10 years or so.
8 or 9 years.
Working up in Pasadena. Dennis Ortega, if you guys have met him before, still living there today. Awesome, quirky, amazing man of God. And then Kevin Blue for 10 years or so, around the late 90s until a few years ago, took Laup over.
And Brenda Salton McNeil.
And Brenda Salton McNeil back in the early day. So the values are not, I'm not going to be able to tell you a lot. That's not a part of what you guys have heard from other ministries. The three central values have been love for the poor, racial reconciliation, and prayer and spiritual warfare. Some of the things that we've been doing and seen God do a lot with is a school of leadership. Kevin Blue started this with, there's assistants, so there's teams that we call, the students, we call them interns, grouped in, 3, 4, 5, 6 students on a team. And then we'll have assistant site coordinators that lead those teams. That's usually 10 to 15 people, and every Sunday we meet with them. And those are some of the best times I've ever had. Kevin created this tradition where it's collaborative learning. What's going on your team? How would you guys handle that? And honestly, as the staff, mostly we sit back and these guys interact and give each other feedback, and periodically when it's needed or helpful, we'll pipe in a little bit. But it's this collaborative learning thing we've seen. In terms of coming back and touching the campus, we've seen staff, full-time staff, come out of that, and it feels like the university staff in the LA area, they know that if they have folks that are assistant site coordinators, leaders of teams at Laup, they will get the best leadership training that they're getting anywhere else. That's one of the best things. Done a lot of stuff with, seen a lot happening with spiritual disciplines. Students were really into fasting this past summer. I feel like that's a trend in the generation. Doing Sabbath. We do a technology fast. Do some of you guys do that? Yeah. Right? So no cell, no TV, no internet, whatever. That might be actually the most prophetic thing right now. It's certainly the most resisted. If you guys have ideas about how to follow up and handle that, I'm very open. So God's still at work in Laup. You can go back one slide. Sorry, that was another slide. The big group, yeah. So we had 50 students this past summer on 9 sites throughout the city, doing tutoring, youth work, working with the homeless, working with single moms, recovering prostitutes. Probably the biggest thing in the summer, I would say, was prayer. There's just kind of this movement of the power of prayer. There's a story that I told that actually got put on the university webpage, but it's not the staff page, so you guys might never go there. It's the next slide, this guy named Jonathan. Jonathan just finished his freshman year, more after that, freshman at USC, the guy in the middle in the yellow shirt. He's working with youth in the neighborhood. There's this guy, Angel, and he's just a problem throughout the whole project. He's a long line of gang members in his family, and he's just the troublemaker of the whole thing, stirring up all kinds of trouble. You know, one kid can do a lot, and it was just increasing. Then his cousin came, and it just doubled. And at one point, he brought like a shiv to tutoring, right? Like a little shank, like for stabbing someone. And Jonathan is sharing, he's like, he was getting really scared. He's from this nice neighborhood in Sacramento, and here he's working with this kid. And this kid's, at 13, 14, but it's like a big kid that can do some damage. And here he is, and this kid has a weapon, and he's trying to discipline this kid. He's like, I'm starting to get physically scared. And that was on a Friday, and he went on with his team, and they shared, and they did intensive prayer for this kid, Angel. And they came back on Monday, and seriously, there's nothing else to attribute it to. This kid was like an angel, literally. He's like behaving well. He's obeying their instructions. He's the model student. He's taking leadership with other students. And it's like they can only attribute it to the work of God as they prayed. He was totally moved and transformed by that. The other thing is the other guy, so sorry, I have to go back. This is Terrell Jones. He's actually a staff intern at Cal State Northridge, also a former Division I athlete, one of the assistant site coordinators, so the leaders of a team. And at this collaboration time on a Sunday, we're just sharing stories, and he has this major problem guy in the whole project. You guys had a project with who your problem student is? He leaves every session. He'll go wander the street in a bad neighborhood. Yes, he knows he's not supposed to do all these things. Sit in his car. Found out later, he would drive away outside of the zones in his own car. He would not talk on team discussions. Just totally like one-word answers like, well, everyone's sharing. How are you doing? Fine. No, I don't want to talk about that. Just like the complete problem person. And Terrell's like, what do I do with this guy? He's sharing about this. People are giving input. And then we just pray. And then he and I followed up. We had this 4-step plan for how's Terrell going to engage this guy, get underneath the issues, challenge him, etc. And 4 hours after our meeting, we ended our meeting at 10 p.m. Terrell goes home. At 2 a.m., this guy wakes up and stands up, and Terrell hears it, and it freaks him out, and Terrell jumps up, and this guy says, Terrell, I just had a nightmare. Can you pray for me? Oh. And he shares this recurring nightmare he's had his whole life. They start talking and praying, and it ends up having an hour conversation where Terrell, at that time, talks through all this stuff that we had planned. Oh, over the next couple weeks, here's these steps. And boom, by 3 a.m., the thing's totally addressed, and the guy's a different guy for the rest of the program. So, it's not rocket science. We know that prayer is supposed to be a part of our faith, but it's a different thing to, feel it and live in it and see it lived out. It just, there's a reason that prayer's been around a long time. Campus integration. Here's my thing with that. I don't really have many good stories of that. And I actually appreciate Josh's challenge of the need for that, the need for a more mutually beneficial relationship between urban and campus. So I'm currently an area director, and a month ago I had a conversation with 9 staff on my area team, because I'm telling them I'm thinking about, this urban project. I hadn't even said yes to it at that point. And talking about all the values of what God does in the summer mission. And they're fired up on it. It's great. And I'm like, yeah, so as I'm thinking about taking this layup role, I'm thinking maybe we need to require every campus, one of the requirements for a student leader is they have to go on layup or some other kind of project. And they're like, that's great in theory, but then I get the pushback, where they're like, the thing is, sometimes we send you our best people, and then they come back. I'm on camera right now, right? They come back having an attitude with us on campus, and yeah, God's not here on campus, he's in the city. So whatever, I'm not going to be a student leader anymore. I'm not going to do campus evangelism. That's like whatever, that's for the rich. That's not the Spirit of God. I'm going to go work 3 days a week volunteering at this urban ministry. And the staff are like, dude, you're killing us here. Like, we're sending you our best people, you're taking them away. And the staff, they did understand some students get a lifelong call at an urban project.
Yes.
But what they were pushing back with me was like, this thing needs to feed off itself. And you know what? If they leave campus and they can be the heroic missionary for the summer in an urban setting, but they can't take that back and influence where they live day in, day out, week in, week out, then it's not really that deep of a transformation anyway. And so it was a great conversation, and I feel excited to increase that partnership. So the last slide is our structures. I don't know if this is news to people or not. We have a director. We have assistant directors that supervise the ASCs. So these are students. These have been either older students or young staff interns, sometimes young full-time staff. These are usually staff or other alum. Catherine is the administrator, and then I just took on the direct role, so that's a little bit of our structure. And I'm just stepping into this. For me, it's my dream job, or the closest I've had to it. So I've had kind of a heart for urban issues, but I still love college students. There's something about the potential for how willing to be transformed by God they are, that I can't get away from that, and this kind of brings the best of both worlds. So,
How many weeks and how much?
6 weeks, and yeah, good question coming from you. $1,600. I want to know how you do 800. We bumped it up a little bit, different costs. So we were down at like 12 or 1,300, but right now 1,600. But our students have not had a hard time raising that. So cost of living is a little different, and we pay for a lot of housing. We do end up renting a lot of apartments in the inner city. I think the housing is probably the biggest expense. So, all right.